Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion are simple: to highlight the incredible nonprofits that make our communities stronger. Each episode is a chance for these organizations to tell their story in their words, sharing not just what they do, but why it matters to the people they serve, to their supporters, and to all of us who believe in the power of community. Through podcasting, we hope to amplify their voices, inspire connection, and give them one more tool to impact the hearts of donors, partners, and neighbors alike. This work is made possible through the generous support of our incredible partners: Cap Trust, offering fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations; Western Health Advantage, a local not-for-profit health plan that believes healthcare is more than coverage. It's about caring. CORE, executive leadership and comprehensive support services. They work in it so you can work on it. And Five Star Bank, a local, trusted advisor to community nonprofits for over 25 years. There are some ideas that feel so obvious once you hear them, you wonder why they didn't exist sooner. We all know the power of a wish. We've seen what it can do for a child, how it brings joy, restores hope, and in so many cases changes an entire family's outlook in the middle of something incredibly difficult. But what happens when those same needs show up later in life? What happens when someone who is given everything finds themselves alone, struggling, or simply needing a little help to get through the day? That's where Silver Wishes comes in. In this episode, I sit down with Stephanie Berger, president and co-founder of Silver Wishes, an organization born out of a simple but powerful question: why do wishes have to stop at 18? What started as an idea during COVID, shaped by her own family's experience, has grown into a movement that's restoring dignity, independence, and hope for seniors who are too often overlooked. And here's what makes this conversation so compelling. These aren't bucket list wishes. They're real-life, right-now needs. Things like a working air conditioner, a safe place to sit, or the ability to drive again. Small things that create massive shifts in someone's quality of life. This is a conversation about empathy, community, and about what can happen when one act of kindness turns into a ripple effect far beyond what anyone expected. A dandelion effect, if you will. And some of the stories in this episode? Well, just listen. Stephanie Berger, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm excited because we haven't done an organization that specifically appeals to the needs of seniors. And as much as I don't like the word senior, because I think it starts much too young in many cases, this is going to be really, really neat to have this conversation, especially since it's modeled after something that people are familiar with for youth.
Yeah.
So let's get into the conversation. The organization was your brainchild, and it didn't come out of the blue, but it came out of an experience that you had and thought, wow, we could do this in a different way, but similar. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Right. So I was a volunteer wish granter for Make-A-Wish Foundation. I saw the power of a wish for a child and their families, and I thought, this is the coolest thing ever. But why do wishes have to stop at age 18? And at the same time, when I came up with this idea, it was COVID. We were all housebound, but my mom at the same time had been housebound for 7 years. And my grandma would pray and say, I don't want to wake up in the morning. And I thought, my mom's not the only senior housebound. My grandma's not the only one whose social circle has gotten smaller. Her body's giving out. She's lonely. Let's make wishes happen for another population that's going through a tough time. And you're right. Seniors are not talked about. They're kind of like the forgotten generation, yet they've done so much. So it's an idea where we can now honor them.
And sadly, the fastest growing population of homeless is seniors right now. And it's understandable. You can imagine they're maybe even in their own home, but they can't afford to pay the property taxes and the insurance because they're on fixed income and everything keeps going up. And all of a sudden, horrifically, they lose their home and they become homeless.
You're absolutely right.
And others who are, just on the edge, there's so many needs that the senior population has at this point, just because things have changed dramatically. And I agree with you. It's not right.
Right.
It's just not right for all that they've given
Mhm.
and where they are, and had the understanding that if they did all these things, they would be good.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case. Who do you find is actually the requestor, let's say, for a wish? Is it a family member? Is it the senior themselves? How does that happen?
It varies. It's an interesting question because a lot of the family members have either left there's the senior, the loved one, and so the senior is alone, and the family's prideful. They're embarrassed, so they don't want to ask for help. We're actually getting a lot of the wishes from neighbors, friends, caseworkers, social workers, but sometimes family members, but I guess not as often as coming from friends and neighbors that actually see the senior that's going through the tough time.
Yeah, who actually may see them more often than the family member, who
Right.
could be a bit distant and
Mhm.
once a week, once a month, whatever it may be, whereas that neighbor is there every single day
Right.
and sees something going on. Maybe the car's sitting in the driveway with a flat tire, or the windows
Mhm.
are open and it's 110 degrees outside. What's wrong?
Right. And a lot of times, if the family is aware of the plight, they usually can step in and help.
In terms of categories and requests for support, what do you find more often than not? Is it, I'm imagining it would be maybe home maintenance or vehicle maintenance or something like that, or a health benefit to some degree. But I know from our prior conversation that's not always necessarily the case.
Yeah.
It could be something really simple.
The wishes are coming in all shapes, all sizes, because every senior is going through a different battle and different obstacles. I thought coming from Make-A-Wish, I was expecting bucket list wishes. We've only had a very small handful of those. They're actually wishes, like you said, they're very small to just help overcome a financial strain. A lot of food gift cards, gas gift cards, but also their wishes to help keep them in their homes longer. We've had several wishes for mobility aids, mobility scooters, walkers. For a while, the most popular wish was a power lift recliner chair. Just getting out of a chair on their own gives them that independence to be able to do something without relying on someone else. And other wishes are bigger. They are their home repairs to allow them to stay in the home longer. And every wish usually helps them overcome an obstacle that they can't overcome on their own.
And for the benefit of those listening, I want to put this out there because in many cases, it may not be a wish that you could satisfy from a monetization standpoint. In other words, yeah, we couldn't afford to buy a roof for that particular individual. But if there's a roofing company that happens to hear this and says, hey, you know what, we'll give them a roof.
Yeah.
We'll fix that 1,200 square foot house roofing for them. So it's not that it's undoable. It just depends on how it gets done in some cases. So there are in-kind opportunities for people who maybe have that business who can get in touch with you to say, hey, if this comes up, we're here.
Absolutely. We would love that. And that's a great example. We just got a wish nomination yesterday for a woman who escaped the Paradise Fires. I think that was like in 2018, maybe. She drove out through the fires, and it was a very traumatizing experience for her. Was in a shelter for a week, moved to Lincoln, and bought an old home. And then her husband passed away. So she's a widow, and she refuses to drive. It's too traumatic after that experience. And now her AC doesn't work. And so her wish is for a new AC unit. That's a lot of money for Silver Wishes. But if we can get the help to even cover a portion of it, or an AC company to donate a unit, like you said, it helps us if we can spread our donor dollars farther if somebody can help us with the bigger projects.
Tell me how one goes about even getting into the system to be considered for a wish. What's that look like?
We just have a simple nomination form on our website, silverwishes.org, and anyone can nominate the senior, or the senior can nominate themselves. And if the senior isn't comfortable on the computer, they can call us and then we'll have a volunteer fill out the form with them over the phone. And then once a month, the board reviews all of the wishes that have come in for the month. And we talk about what impact does that wish have on the senior? And can we financially afford to make it happen?
Mm-hmm.
And then will it change the senior's outlook on life going forward?
Well, I love that. So the consideration, which would have been the next logical question, how do you vet the award? That's the process. It's really what the impact is to the senior.
Right.
Which is why I see some wishes, or you shared some wishes that I thought, well, that's kind of unusual, but it gave that person such sense of pride or enthusiasm, excitement. It just changed their life because of that wish.
And it's so true. What we might think of a basic wish that wouldn't really change our outlook, it can change someone else's outlook depending on what they're going through. I just granted a wish this week. Lynette has a service dog and the AC didn't work in her car, so she couldn't take her service dog anywhere. She wasn't driving anywhere. She felt housebound, and she said, I felt like I lost my sense of purpose.
Yeah.
So we are paying to have the AC repaired, and the windows, the switches needed to be replaced in the car as well. And she says, I feel like I got my sense of purpose back. And so we take for granted, we hop in a car, we go places. She wasn't able to do that.
How about collaborators? Who else do you work with in the community? Maybe other nonprofit organizations or you mentioned caseworkers, so that's coming from some sort of social service that's suggesting. What does that look like?
So we get nominations. We love it when other organizations nominate a wish, especially because it helps our vetting process. A lot of caseworkers or social workers that help with transitional housing. Seniors, like you said, are living on the streets. Yet when they move into transitional housing, they don't have anything. So they might have a wish for a kitchen table or a chair or a new bed. We do get wishes from Seniors First. People call in there all the time. They're desperate. They don't know where to turn, and Seniors First will point them in our direction. Or if we get a wish for a senior that we can help out with a need, and then we talk to other nonprofits in the area. I'd love to share a story about Mildred.
Oh, please. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Mildred is 87 years old, and she took in her 5 great-grandchildren to care for full time. They come from 2 sets of parents, and there's 2 sets of twins, ages 8 to 12. Their wish was for new school clothes for the kids. She couldn't afford to get them dressed to go to school. And we debated as a board, is this for Mildred or for the kids? Well, it's a financial strain that Mildred was facing. So we granted her a shopping spree with the promise to buy herself some items. And then she could also treat the kids to some new school clothes. We brought Lost But Not Forgotten with us to that wish reveal. They came with loaded backpacks of back to school supplies for all 5 kids. The kids were jumping up and down. They were grateful. Well, then Lost But Not Forgotten, their hearts melted from the experience and decided we're taking those kids shopping for Halloween costumes. So they did that. Then they went and told the Moose Lodge. The Moose Lodge says, well, we're buying the family Thanksgiving dinner. Another organization heard about it, says, we're going to get them Christmas gifts and a Christmas dinner. And then the Alliance Defending Families and Children.
Sure, Tiffany Loeffler.
They heard about it and they got them all new bunk beds. So it's that ripple effect when you work together as a community, different organizations are involved. Great things can really happen.
That is one of the best domino effect descriptions I think anybody shared in the studio, because it just cascaded from, your small involvement to another organization, to another, to another, to another. So that was 5 different.
You're right. And our involvement was very small. I mean, we did give her a big shopping spree, but it's called the Dandelion Effect. Those seeds, one wish, the seeds blow and they scatter, and that ripple effect just keeps planting.
And I like that because I saw that on your website as well. And it was like, I like the analogy to what that looks like. In terms of funding, how is the organization funded?
So we try to diverse our funding. We do 2 fundraisers a year. We have our big one every May, and then we have a small one. We're a beneficiary of the Lincoln Community Foundation in the fall with a bingo night. And then we do grants, but we really do rely on individual donors, corporate donors, and in-kind donations like we talked about
Hmm.
earlier for materials, supplies, and we're always looking for corporate sponsors.
I can imagine, as they are out there too. It's just a matter of finding the right organization, the
Right.
right business that says, hey, this is who we service.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we're doing all we can for our community as well.
Hmm.
If there were an opportunity, let's say somebody's extremely philanthropic
Yeah.
and is either one of those 40, 50-year-old beneficiaries of a senior who has now left some sort of a significant
Windfall.
windfall.
Mm.
We see this great transfer of wealth taking place, and they go, boy, I remember mom and dad. That was really
Mm.
important to me. And I'd like to give you a blank check. What would it look like if that opportunity presented itself? Whether money wasn't an object and you had this big sum to do something with.
It would be huge for Silver Wishes because we are a small nonprofit. It would allow us to say yes to a lot more wishes. A lot more seniors would have their lives changed going forward. We don't want to say no because the wishes are too big or too expensive. So to have that kind of donation would allow us to reach and impact even more seniors.
And it seems to me, it just seems like this is obvious. Why isn't there an organization like this? But there wasn't.
There are,
Okay.
but they're a little different. And so AARP has Wish of a Lifetime. Theirs is different. They celebrate seniors that have given back, and it's usually like trips or
Mm-hmm.
celebrations. They want to celebrate the aging process. It's not to help overcome an obstacle. And that's how we differ. We want to help change an outlook on life going forward where they're just celebrating the seniors, but they are granting wishes.
And I do see the distinction, and that is a difference,
Mm-hmm.
definitely a difference. In terms of how we met, I want to share that because it was really unique. We were at an awards presentation, and we were doing an episode for the attendees who were recognized at that presentation, of which you were one of them. And so was another organization in town. And as you two were talking, you realized that you granted his mother a wish.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
Right?
That was the best thing ever because it was like I got to see the wish come full circle. I had never met him before. He had never even heard of Silver Wishes till he got the award. And then he said something struck a chord and he texted his mom and he said, "Hey, mom, who was that group that granted you that wish?" And she texted back Silver Wishes and he says, "They're here tonight." And so he introduced himself, and his mom had a string of bad luck health-wise. She felt like she had been swindled, and she just felt like everything was going against her. And so she had bought this one car that did not turn out as promised, and it had a terrible paint job on the hood. And every time she looked at it, she said it reminded her of being swindled. And so we received the Wish nomination to replace the hood just by painting it. We repainted the whole car for her. And this gentleman had said it really did change her outlook on life. And that is the coolest thing. After 5 years now, I'm starting to hear the stories of how it has changed people.
And how ironic that would be another nonprofit leader that runs into you who was the beneficiary.
Yeah. And he didn't nominate her for a wish. It was her neighbor. Oh, and this is really cool because Christina is the wish recipient who got this wish. She also took part in the Dandelion Effect. She nominated her neighbor also for a wish because she had just lost her grandson suddenly. And she took the flowers that we gave her during her wish reveal and she pressed them and made an arrangement for her neighbor to pay it forward and bring some joy to her neighbor as well.
How sweet.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And there you can see you changed the entire mood, the attitude, the demeanor of an individual just with a paint job.
And that's what they said. When she showed up the very first time, she was sad, embarrassed, and head hanging low. When she picked up the new painted car, they said her whole personality had changed.
Sure. Some sense of pride again.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Those are the stories that I think are so engaging because many times we don't see the impact. We know it's out there,
Right.
and we know something good is happening and we're doing what we need to do from a metric standpoint, but we don't get the feedback from a personal standpoint.
Totally.
And when you hear it that way, yes, we granted this wish and this was the recipient's request and it was fulfilled. But to hear what that did for the individual as a result of the fulfillment, that's the greater impact.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do this for. That's why we do all the things that we do.
Right. And I mean, there are so many great organizations that are making an impact too, but it is really rewarding when you get to hear those success stories.
Let's take a minute to hear from those who make this program possible, and then we'll return to hear more from Stephanie Berger, co-founder of Silver Wishes.
I'm James Beckwith, President and CEO of Five Star Bank. We're dedicated to supporting nonprofit organizations who advocate for the strength, resilience, and vitality of those they serve. When nonprofit organizations thrive, our community does too. By supporting the Nonprofit Podcast Network, Five Star Bank is amplifying the voices and meaningful impact of our nonprofit community. We're Five Star Bank, a trusted nonprofit partner. How can we help you?
We are really excited to be part of the family and contribute to the work that you all are doing. CORE provides fractional and interim executive services, along with comprehensive back office solutions that go into our client sites and do the work to give them the capacity they need in order to move through transitions, whether that's planned or unplanned. Or companies also work with our accounting and finance, back office solutions, human resources, technology, and administration. The reason why our back office solutions add value is because we save them time and money, anywhere from 20 to 30% of what they would spend on that back office solution. We work in it so they can actually work on it. CXORE.com and contact me directly at DTEAT@CXORE.com.
If you're interested in learning more about how CORE may help your organization, visit CXORE.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com. So back to reality, the big dream vision check is a dream.
Yeah, right.
But the day-to-day is here. What's the greatest need of the organization?
I would say volunteers. We did just expand our service area in January. So not only are we in Placer County, we're in Citrus Heights, Fair Oaks, Carmichael, and Orangevale. And we need volunteers in that area specifically to help research wishes, fulfill wishes, even just get our name out there that we even exist. That's one of our biggest challenges. A lot of people have never heard of us before.
And I can appreciate that. That's so many organizations. It's part of the reason we exist with the Nonprofit Podcast Network is to help great organizations have a presence someplace in a consistent way.
Yeah.
And you can go and find something. You don't have to worry about it disappearing. It's not a one-time thing. And it's tough because there are a lot of nonprofits and there are a lot of great organizations doing a lot of good work. But it's hard to know that there's one for this or one for that.
Where their focus area is.
Exactly. Exactly. In terms of the organization itself, how many people do you employ? Are there any employees?
We are a working board and everyone's a volunteer. I get a very small stipend that is a restricted donation from a board member.
Okay.
So I don't really even consider myself an employee, but so we don't have any full-time staff.
About how many volunteers do you have?
We have about 85.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes. But that also includes people that are just helping at Christmas time when we do our Christmas tree deliveries. So that's the majority of those volunteers.
When somebody like yourself is, especially a co-founder
Mm-hmm.
who has been there from the beginning, you saw the need. We can't not see the need.
Right.
I mean, all you have to do is go shopping anywhere and you can see, seniors who are challenged. Maybe they're in that center or that mall because it's cool
Yeah.
and they're trying to get out of the heat, or cold and it's warm, whatever the situation is. It's really difficult to remove ourselves from whatever that situation is that we serve.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And I see it with every nonprofit leader. You name it. It could be, animal. Well, you can't get away from animals. You see it and then they feel
That's
there's,
because we're so passionate about it.
that's
though.
right. And,
Yeah.
and the empathy just exudes.
Yeah.
But there's times when you just kind of have to say, I am a human. I do need a break from it. And we're going to go beyond the mission for a second here and just ask a few questions.
All right.
So people can learn a little bit more about Stephanie as the person.
Okay.
So since I said animals, let's start there. Dog or cats?
Oh, dog.
Okay. If you're going on a drive, would you prefer podcast, music, or silence?
Worship music.
Worship music.
Uh-huh.
Okay, great. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, again, it goes back to Silver Wishes, but it's Bob Goff. I read it. He
Sure.
inspired me in his Love Does book. And he said, just stand on the edge of yikes and jump. So,
There's a similar one. I know Bob Goff does a lot of series through the local churches too. That's very similar. It's like, do something every day that scares the heck out of you.
yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. What's a perfect day off look like for you?
Oh, the perfect day. Probably going on a hike. I love to hike and checking out our local trails, but also going to the coast and doing trails along the coast.
What was your first car?
A Buick Century. I don't know what year it was. It was a hand-me-down, but it had the velour bench in the front. So,
And then guilty pleasure.
turning off all devices and reading by the pool.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for that. It's always fun to see where people are in a scope of their private space.
Yeah.
Which makes it, fun to understand how they got to where they are. If somebody's interested in supporting the organization, where would they go?
To our website,
Okay,
silverwishes.org.
great.
We have a page on how to get involved where you can fill out a volunteer application, and there's also a donation page. We also have just information about all of our wishes are posted there with stories and about who we are.
And I want you to give the number too, if you could, because when you mentioned that, I thought, wow, that makes sense, because a lot of seniors don't have access to a computer, or a lot of people aren't even computer literate,
Right.
depending on their age or their access as they were growing up. So what is the number?
So our phone number, 916-287-7172.
Okay, I will put all of this in the show notes too, so it's easy. If somebody's listening, they can just go right
Great.
there and get that information if they want to share it with
Awesome.
somebody who might have an interest.
Good.
Stephanie, what a neat organization. I love the mirroring for an organization we all know in Make-A-Wish, but the application to the senior population, to people that, as you said early on, tend to be forgotten and can easily be forgotten because they're not as visible. And especially if they're in that house, they've been in the house for
Right.
35 years and they're with a walker or disabled. And to recognize those people and to give a venue for them to get recognized in a variety of different ways is just amazing.
Well, thank you.
It really is. And what you and that team of 85 volunteers are doing is really incredible, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a joy to just share about Silver Wishes.
Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. We hope today's episode inspired you and gave you a deeper look into the work of our local nonprofits. If you believe in our mission to amplify their voices, please take a moment to leave us a positive review and share this episode with a friend. It helps more people discover the incredible work happening in our community. And don't miss future episodes. Subscribe to our weekly updates and monthly newsletter at nonprofpod.com. And if you're part of a nonprofit that would like to be featured, we'd love to hear from you. Just visit the Guests tab on our website. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is recorded and produced at Hear Me Now Studio with generous support from our outstanding partners. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, online at captrust.com. Western Health Advantage, local care with community impact. Find the plan that fits at westernhealth.com. CORE, executive leadership and comprehensive support services. Visit cxore.com. And 5 Star Bank, a local trusted advisor to community nonprofits for over 25 years. 5starbank.com.